to do the IG workshop.
Sorry, I have to find where. Good afternoon, Chairman Baravi, Vice Chair Shah, board members, Dr. Fennoy. Thank you for the opportunity. Our chairman of the audit committee, Noah Silver, was here since 1:30, and then he had to go for a 6 o'clock meeting, so he apologized that he had to leave. Today, our workshop will have two main sessions. The first one is about what we have done for the last 7 years. The second part will be our work plan. Some of you may not recall the creation of the IG had gone through a lengthy process. And to give you a very quick historical perspective, the process was actually started back in 2010 when the county referendum was calling for a county IG shop. And then at the time, board member Bill Graham brought to this board's attention and expressed the interest that we may want to have our own IG. So throughout July 21st, 2010 until July 2012, the board went through a total of 19 meetings and workshops, and resulting in the creation of the IG office. And then the board also has passed 6 policies regulating what the IGO should be doing. And the board finally approved the first IG contract exactly 7 years ago tomorrow. So today we earmark the 7th year. So we are very pleased to be here today. And then with me on my left is our legal counsel, Liz McBride. And then to my right is Randy Law. He's our audit director, has been with the school district for about 23 years. And then also with us, our investigating director, Oscar Westretro. Oscar comes from the state Department of DOE, OIG, as the investigating director. So collectively, we have been doing a lot of audit and investigation for the county. I personally been serving as the district auditor for 17 years, and then became the IG for the last 7 years. And very proud of what we have accomplished. So what I'd like to do is to go through our presentation very quickly. The first slide shows you all the school board policies that set what we're supposed to do with the audit committee, audit and the IG operations, investigation of allegation of fraud, and follow-up. And then it is important to know that what are the benefits of audit and investigation. Our first priority is always to provide for a safe learning environment for students, teachers, and other employees. So I'm going to show it to you, what we have done for the last 7 years in this area. Of course, promoting transparency, fiscal responsibility, and accountability. Increase public confidence and trust, which is very important to us too. Of course, our work costs some money. We have to add value to the organization. And I'm going to share with you in what areas that we are adding value to the school district. And then, of course, strengthen controls. And this is part of the issue that most government agencies is encountering for the non-compliance issue. They're always subject to jurisdiction to a lot of penalties, and then also being cited by the related state auditors, of course. And as I mentioned that, we always consider students first. I'd like to share with you some of the audit that we have done. The first one is the school crisis response plan that we presented the report to the board at a closed-door session. And this project was actually completed before the shooting incidents happened in our neighboring county. And then we saw the importance of it. We did a detailed analysis, and we gave our conclusion to the school police for follow-up and to make sure corrective actions are implemented. And then also, we did our school bus inspection and maintenance. We did it in 2 unannounced site visits. We pointed out the school buses with the problems, and we actually went back and showed it to the staff which school buses had a problem. And then eventually we give them a list, and then we solve the 3rd time and let them know that we are coming back. And it's good that staff was able to correct all the deficiencies that we identify. And also, and other things that we look into related to the student safety is the school district vehicle driver license verification. And of course, the facility safety inspection. And then the other one that we always focus on is the vendor and consultants background checks. When we did the school audit, we looked in very carefully to make sure all consultants' contracts are signed by staff, because the contract requires the background check. So we don't take that lightly. We will say that even they get one violations, because if we allow a vendor or consultant to come into the school center without verification of their background, it subject our student to unnecessary unintended result. And also food safety, and also parent sign out for student for aftercare program. So these are some examples for the audit. And also for investigation that we have been getting involved regarding the allegations. We investigate and report it. These are all student related regarding the grade changes, testing, safety inspection, attendance, so you name it. Almost every aspect related to student safety that we have touched on. Since 2012, the OIG came into being. Our staff level has been pretty much constant. You see that we have a total of the administrative staff, same, since 2014. Audit staff, same for all the years. Although the audit work and special requests has increased significantly for the last 7 years. And the audit shop was able to streamline our work, and then we have good experienced staff who are able to handle it in a very effective and efficient manner. And investigative staff, we have 3 and 4 all this time until 2017. We add in one intake coordinator, which is a require for a complete investigating shop, and also is needed for the accreditation. So in terms of staffing level, it's been almost the same for the last 7 years. And this is our organizational chart. We have 3 functions: audit, investigation, and compliance with quality assurance. Apologize, this chart is kind of small because we want to give you a summary of everything that we have done. If you look to the further right-hand side, the last two columns, these are the total in number of audits that we have performed for the last 7 years, and also the average per year, as well as the recommendations which are related to control, compliance issue, and effectiveness and efficiency. And also the last two rows, the 3 rows, give you an idea of the fiscal impact we brought to the school district. And then this is the investigative function that, in a nutshell, throughout the last 7 years, we have completed a total of 88 reports and released it, and an average of about 15 per year. We would like to share with you, in comparing to the local IG shop, Miami-Dade, Palm Beach County IG, Broward IG, and ourselves. These are the number of staff that this IG shop has, 6, 9, 13, and 5. And then I'd like to bring your attention to the last row. The reports published by these entities for this IG ranges from 31, 23, 29, and then we published 88 for the same period of time. And the sources of this information come from their annual reports that they publish on the website. This is a big picture of the OIG. I'd like my staff, Randy, to go through very quickly in more detail about audit so that you get a better idea of what we have done in audit. Randy?
Thank you and good afternoon. The state recently passed a law that is effective July 1st of 2019 that requires any school district receiving $500 million or more in federal, state, and local funds per year to hire an internal auditor. These slides summarize the major statutory responsibility of the internal auditors. Basically, we are performing all of the functions except a comprehensive district-wide risk assessment. But we do perform risk assessment on a project basis by program, departments, and school. And we have included a project for conducting a comprehensive district-wide risk assessment in our current year's proposed work plan. As indicated in the previous slide on number 8, during the past 7 years, we completed an average of 186 audits per year, which included 175 school audits and 11 performance audit and special requests. We also responded to an average of 5 special requests per year from schools, district staff, school police, and the state attorney's office that do not result in a written report. For the 186 audits completed every year, we identified an average of 681 audit findings with an estimated fiscal impact of $2 million and provided 839 recommendations to correct the deficiencies. State rule requires us to conduct an annual audit of the school's internal funds. In addition to the financial accuracy and compliance, our school audits also covers student safety, such as the background check, Mr. Cho already covered it, the student registration and dismissal procedures for after-school program and safe school programs. In addition, we also verify if lessees using school facilities and vendors who are performing services on school campus provide us with adequate proof of liability insurance to protect the district from unwarranted liability. We constantly work with district staff in developing procedures to improve internal controls and compliance. As a result, you can see from this slide, the number of schools with no findings has doubled from 23 schools in fiscal year 2012 to 47 schools in 2018. At the same time, the total number of school audit findings decreased by 21% from 568 in 2012 to 451 in 2018. Our performance audits cover many different areas. Here's a summary of the major areas covered by our audits in the past 7 years. The areas of audit coverage included student safety and academic programs, the financial and operational efficiency and effectiveness, the IT security, and we also work closely with the school police for frauds identified by our audits. Examples of audits covered by the various areas are included in the appendix at the end of this handout. In summary, over 95% of our audits are directly related to the welfare of students and schools. And this concludes my presentation on the part of the audit section. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Restrepo to cover the investigation units.
Good afternoon. My name is Oscar Restrepo. I am the director for the OIG Investigations Unit. It is my honor to lead a group of highly educated, talented, and hardworking professionals within the unit that are dedicated to the school district and to the mission of their work. The OIG's investigative unit enhances public trust by initiating investigations designed to detect, deter, prevent, and eradicate fraud, waste, financial mismanagement, misconduct, and other abuses of wrongdoings in government. First item I'm going to show you, you've seen once before, kind of break it down by the average of what we do per year. The left column is what we've done from fiscal year 2014 to 2019, but we're averaging 146 complaints that we process on a yearly basis. From that, we open inquiries, investigations, 43, 103 other complaints are referred and monitored through our office. We've issued an average of 15 reports, and we have a substantial financial impact through the investigations unit. How do we receive our complaints? Well, the OIG receives complaints from many sources. The district's hotline was instituted in March 2013. The hotline provides access 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and offers employees the ability to file complaints anonymously, which promotes trust from employees. School district employees are generally the primary reporting parties. However, there are other members of the public that reach out to us. That slide will show you that 70% of all the complaints that we've taken over the last 7 years have come through the hotline. So it was a great resource for us.
If I may add, the hotline was strongly recommended, approved by the board at the time, informing the OIG. I think it turned out to be a very good source. And then all the professional organizations, they cited that the using of hotline is an indicator of trust of the public on the organization. I think that we are very proud of that we are able to get the trust to work with the citizen and also the resident of the county. Thank you.
This slide here will show you, it breaks it down by fiscal year, the total complaint intakes that we have taken through the hotline. Of the 874 complaints, 611 were received via the hotline. So the school board decision was a great decision. Along with what Mr. Chu said, hotlines have been proven to be an exceptional tool, as was reported by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in the 2018 report to the nations on occupational fraud and abuse. This mechanism increases the finding of fraud by 46%, over 30% for offices that do not have a hotline. This slide is going to break it down as how are we affecting our students. And this slide will show you, we broke it down by elementary school, middle school, high schools, alternative education, and charter schools as to where are the complaints coming from. And this breaks it down so you can see basically the vast majority, so 693 or almost 80% of the complaints that we take actually affect our students and our schools. Go on. This slide breaks it down, the investigations that we open as a result of those complaints, where almost 72% of the inquiries and investigations open were directly related to schools, where we try to help the students and the teachers to provide a safe environment to work and study in. And this slide is going to break down what do we investigate. This is a series of allegations that we investigated, 269 allegations in the 88 reports that we've issued over the last 6 fiscal years. Anything from misappropriation to theft, But the basic majority of them is fraud, waste, abuse, and financial mismanagement within the school district. And then finally, these pictures were taken on June 26, 2019 at the conference where the investigations received full accreditation by the Commission for Law Enforcement Accreditation. We are one of 35 officers of Inspector General in the state of Florida to have that accreditation. It was a lot of hard work. It took us a little over a year to get it done, but it is done, and we're very, very proud of that. And that'll conclude my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
The third section that we're going to talk about is the compliance and quality assurance. Our Office of Compliance had a doctor appointment, so he's not able to come today. I'd like to walk through it quickly with you. The quality assurance is required by the auditing standards, the Association of Inspector General, and also the Yellow Book promulgated by the U.S. Comptroller of the Treasury. So we have this function in-house since day one to make sure we are complying with all the standards, to make sure that our report has the required quality and accuracy. So these are all everything that we're supposed to perform. And then we follow up with all the findings, recommendations from either audit or investigation. And then we also have to update our operating procedures. And then the slide had shown that we follow up with more than 5,000 recommendations since fiscal year 2013. And we monitor corrective actions. And also we have a staff attending the Construction Oversight Review Committee meeting ongoingly. And then we indicate any potential issue to staff so that corrective actions could be taken immediately. There's some assistance to department that we have put in a work plan that had something to do with, the example is the school impact fees and also the HVAC of the high school. Here are some summaries regarding the peer review that the peer reviewer report to the school board starting from 2013. And then also we did the accreditation in 2019 that indicates that we have successfully passed all the requirements. Are there any questions? Well, I know that we have a lot of material in case, I know the day is long. If you have any questions, please contact us, contact me. I'm more than happy to explain and provide you with more details if you need it.
Microphone, I'm not sure if you were...
Is there more to this this workshop, or is this the end of it?
We're going to second part, the work plan,
Okay,
which
so...
will lay out what we're going to do for next year.
So I guess I can say this now, and then we can go into the second part. And this is, believe me, it's no reflection on those of you that are sitting there. I think you do a wonderful job. When I asked for a workshop, this wasn't what I envisioned. Nobody asked, what we were looking for. And some of the questions that I had that we were told to direct through Mr. Burke, I still haven't gotten answers to because, and what it was specifically was just, I understand that Mr. Chu is going to retire within the next year. And so I really wanted us to have a robust conversation on what direction do we want? Do we want to continue the way we are or have a robust audit department and look into whether we want an arrangement similar to Miami-Dade where they have an agreement with their with the Inspector General for Miami-Dade. And the reason I was looking at that in part was cost. One of the answers I did get from Mr. Burke today, which I was looking for, was what does it cost us to outsource to Pinellas? Because we do outsource when it's certain levels of personnel. So we've spent $93,430 since the inception outsourcing, which isn't that big an amount, but it's still significant. And I had also asked, and this, Mr. Burke, I apologize, I should have asked you this earlier, but one of the questions I had in the beginning of the year was, what the dollar amount was to run our audit department, because we're going to keep doing audits. The audit department is, we have to have a robust audit department. What does it cost to run that department, and what is the cost for the IG office, for the extra personnel, for the office space, benefits, et cetera, to see if it makes sense to explore a conversation with the county IG. So really what I was looking for was something exploratory, because I know the value of the office. And Mr. Chu, most people are not, I always say are not irreplaceable, but I think you're irreplaceable. I think you really do a phenomenal job. But I really felt that it's time to look at that model. So I don't know if you want to start having that conversation now before the work plan. And then the second part of it, which if we're going to continue the way we are, I was looking to have a conversation about the policy, which, the policy needs some tweaks. And, if we are continuing the same way, I think now more than ever, we need to look at the policy. So those are my comments, and I'll entertain where people are at.
Ms. Brill, just so you know, a meeting is, as I advised you, I was contacted by principal leadership, and so a meeting has been scheduled for Monday at 9:30 a.m. It's a meeting between the General Counsel's office, the Inspector General's office, HR, and principal leadership, and I'll be there to start them working together to come up with some ideas to bring back to the board on policy changes that'll make everything work a little more consistent with the way, a lot of you express, concerns. So that meeting is scheduled for Monday morning at 9:30.
And just as a follow-up, so that we need right away anyway, because if we were to go to a different model, it's going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. So we do need that piece, and then we need to have the other conversation as to whether this is the direction we continue, or do we. I just really want to know what it would look like if we followed their model. And if we stayed the way we are, and just kind of dollars and cents, and it's no reflection on anybody, but, if we can save money by not outsourcing, that's one of my issues.
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. And Mrs. Brill, you and I are on the same page with this. I also wanted to have a discussion about this. I think now is the time for us to discuss what we look like going forward. I've done a bit of my own research into this just through your audit committee and through staff, and I've made some phone calls. Your audit committee absolutely adores you. They think that you're wonderful. They have mentioned over and over what a thorough audit is done. And the work that's done by the department really is second to none. So we're very appreciative of that. And I know you guys are always finding funds that are missing or lost or, not accounted for. Or even better, when you find out that a school or a department is doing a great job. We love hearing that. And they're, being ethical. But to me, I would love to see a cost savings of potentially outsourcing the IG as well. But I do think that there's a higher implication there. I think that the most important thing to me about the idea of taking investigations and putting them on the outside is really the moral side of it and the ethical side of it, that there is a way for us as a school board to feel that we are one step removed from the investigations. I don't like the way that we currently have oversight over your position. To me, that is an uncomfortable place that I've never really felt like it's has been addressed. The other thing is that I think that there are ways that we could investigate not only going to the county IG, but if there's anyone else that would be willing to oversee that, anywhere else in the state, that would be someone who could oversee it, and then potentially still have that person keep our employees hired on. I don't want anyone to lose their jobs over a change like this, but in my vision, it would be to keep the audit in-house and then to just move the supervision and then potentially the employees of that person to be supervised by somebody outside of this building. I think this building is the part that bothers me. It seems too insular. So that was what I wanted to discuss. I think we should be discussing how it would look if we split those two things up and the costs associated with it. And then also, I also believe that we need to think about paring down your work plan. I think that the work plan is overly ambitious, as you show from the comparisons that you just did from what other departments are able to accomplish. It's amazing what you all do with the small amount of resources that you have, but I think that you're working so hard to accomplish so many things. I don't think that we need to be spending all our time on constant investigations and constant audits of things that are doing okay. So I think we should figure out a way to pare down the amount of work that's being done. I think having a strong investigation side and having a strong audit is important, but I think it's a little bit too much at this point. So I'll leave my comments there, but that's sort of the conversation that I wanted to have with everyone as well. I know that you all do a very, very good job, and you're very, very well liked among people and staff, and they think that you're very professional. But I think we need to just look at the whole department and make sure that this is appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mrs. Andrews?
First of all, it took us a long time to get to where we are today. I must say to you all and those who are not here from your department, I really appreciate the growth and development that has come from me sitting here on this board, and in beginning with the IG department, and even before we had the IG department. It took us a long time to get all the policies together, looking at whether we would outsource or whether we would go inside. And you have provided us so much information based on where we started from and where we are today. As I sit and I look at thinking about maybe a possibility of outsourcing, we have to be really careful with that, because, you know, when you look at the Palm Beach County IG and Miami-Dade, and when we look at the money that's involved in what they do, it's totally kind of different from what we're doing. And as I looked at the costs that we have actually saved based on being on the inside, I felt pretty good in reviewing all this information with you as to where we've come from, where we've gone, and we've accomplished what we've done. And then when I think about people actually calling in, these are people that have concerns, 70% from the hotline. We have to hear these voices. I think we have to respond, and we have to do what we have to do to come back with results for people who have concerns. You have been tremendous in that. And then when I look at you actually being looked at by other agencies that are equivalent to you, and you have received awards for your performance here in Palm Beach County from your peer reviews as well as your accreditations, we seem to be a model for other people that actually are looking at us. And that was one of the questions I asked Mr. Chu. I said, before I would think about trying to move to something else, I want to hear what other like agencies similar to yours are saying about you. And that's when you told me that people are looking at you and asking for your help in developing, you know, an IG program in their district that's kind of like equivalent to ours. So that was very good for me to see that. And so it's a big step when we say we might dismantle this, because it took us a long time to put it together. And maybe there are some specific things that we're talking about tweaking and improving. None of us are above improvement. So I'm always willing to look at trying to be better with what we have. But I can tell you, I want to commend you for all of the great work you've done since I've been sitting here, and the awards you receive from across the state. So as I look at my fellow board members, I want us to be very careful before we decide to kind of dismantle without having the right information as to where we're going. So that's how I feel about it. And I really enjoyed reading all the things that you had done and all the accomplishments you've made and the money we've saved and where we're going. But there may be some little tweaks that we have to do to make it better. So whatever that is, we have to be open with that and bring it out. But to dismantle and go outside when we're actually saving money and getting the job done, I'll need a lot of convincing to be able to kind of support that.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. Well, Mrs. Andrews said it very well. I will just summarize, in my opinion, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think it's misleading to quote the amount that we spent with the Pinellas IG, because that was a very, very small subset of investigations. I too want to make mention of all the awards you received and all of the extensive training that your staff has gone through to just be superlative. I think one of the things that can be worked on is the relationships between some of the departments, but then on the other hand, if everybody likes the IG, then I think there's something wrong there too, right? But I'm curious to know, or to be clear of what the issues are that will be discussed on Monday, because you'll be, Mr. Barbier, representing the board, right? So
These are really, the general counsel had given us a memo back before on some suggestions that she had. I know one of the concerns that I've heard some of you express is that currently the policy requires that when the Inspector General is done with his investigation, it's got to be released to the board immediately. That's a problem because there's no provision there for delaying that so that it doesn't become public until OPS or HR has the ability to be part of that investigation. So they're going to, what I was hoping for is between the IG's people and the general counsel's, we can figure out a way to make that work more cohesive so that reports don't come out in the public and be published in the newspaper before OPS has a chance to investigate and determine exactly whether, the IG office can find something wasn't done properly, but there's going to be a stigma attached to anybody that's mentioned in that report if something is said not, and it may be a mistake. It might have been an honest mistake. It might have been a criminal mistake. It might have been an ethical mistake, but it could be a lot of different things, and there's no opportunity to clear a person's name before they're already condemned in the newspaper. So that's one of the things we're looking at. But Mrs. Rico had given us a memo a while back of a lot of changes that she thought would make the process work better. Dr. Robinson?
thank you. So, yeah, I read that memo, and so, okay, I'm gonna leave that there. I read that memo, period. So, but let me just talk about, there's a balancing act here, if it seems to me, right? Because, I mean, there are some investigations, as I understand, that have gone to other departments to investigate and kind of got stuck there or got delayed, right? And so, and as I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand, if it appears that publishing the IG's report would impair an investigation by OPS or definitely school police, that's just simply the conversation and it's not released. I mean, and so I think the policy can be tweaked to codify what they're doing, but it troubles me a bit. I'm hesitant to support a concept that says that the IG does not release something until the other departments look at it to determine if it's going to be criminal or administrative discipline just because, right? I think that part of the sensitivity, I get the negative impression that the public will have when there's an investigation by the IG and it's published and it says that Debbie did whatever, right? But I think it's a different thing to then say administratively that meaning the superintendent will be investigating further to determine the appropriate discipline, right? Just because it is published does not mean that we must react to it, right? And so that bugs me. There has to be a balance there, right?
So Dr. Robinson, and I agree 100%. I mean, I was on the board with you when we put all this in place years ago, and we spent, I was in the back, but I heard him mention 19 different meetings where we discussed the policy, put everything in place. So what I suggested is to make it work so that I've said before, I think the IG should have authority to look at anything the IG wants to look at, and nobody should be able to stand in his way. But there's got to be some working relationship with the other departments. So what I suggested to the IG's office is that if they turn something over to OPS or school police is a different matter, because if it's criminal and they handle that. But if it's turned over to one of the other departments, that that the Inspector General doesn't lose it, doesn't lose control of it. He still has the authority to say, here it is, you've got this period of time to do your investigation. If you don't get it back to me in a reasonable time, and he can ask for reports on the status. If you don't get back to a reasonable time, it comes back to the board, and he can tell the board that, it turned it over to a department and it's been stalled somewhere. I mean, I'm not suggesting that he gives up his authority, because I was the first one to argue that we needed an IG for the district, and I certainly don't want to hamper his authority. I just want to make sure that there's a better working relationship between the different departments, because we've all heard it for years about the different problems between OPS, HR, IG, the administration's ability to do their investigation. So I was hoping to put them all in the same room and let them talk it out and then come back. I'm not going to tell them what to do. I'm just going to have them talk it all out so that they can come back to you, because the hardest part is just getting them all to sit in the same room. I don't think that's ever been done before. So we're going to try that and see if they can come to some agreement on how it would work better, and then bring some suggestions back to you. They will bring them back to you as to what they think, how the policy should be changed. Ms. Brew?
Thank you. So just as a point of clarification, there was never any intent to dismantle the audit department, and there still could have been a hotline. So, for me, it was just a matter of looking at it. You know that when I sat up here years ago when we established the IG's office, had nothing to do with the personalities. I just felt very uncomfortable with the IG reporting to us and being in-house. If this board wants to keep it that way, I don't have a problem with us moving in that direction. But then I want to talk about succession planning, because there's only one Mr. Chu. And you're going to be retiring. So we've really got to, we don't need that day to come and then say, now what? There's got to be something in place. So whatever direction this board decides to go, we need to have that conversation. But I still would like to know, what it would look like. Because the investigations, my understanding is that the Miami-Dade IG has people in the office, and I'd like to see that. And I disagree with Dr. Robinson. There is a cost when it has to go out to Pinellas County, and they often don't know how we operate when they come back with recommendations. So, I think we need to continue that conversation.
Ms. McQuinn, then Mrs. Andrews, then Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I'll be fairly quiet on this issue because I was not a member of the board when the decision was made to meld the two, the audit and the IG functions. But listening over the last 3 years, it appears to me that part of the decision was person-specific in terms of the confidence in Mr. Chu. So I want to, for the record, for us, yes, to have a workshop. I know this workshop was, it's published. We knew what it was. But I also know from over a year ago that Mrs. Brill was concerned about the succession planning, and that we were to have a workshop on whether those two departments are together under one person. And I've talked to Mr. Chu about it, and he's explained to me that there are many other districts that have those two functions together, the auditor and the IG's office. But I think for everyone, public included, let's have that discussion. The other is when I have had a discussion with Mr. Chu about whether something is administrative or IG related, he, as he correctly should, refers me to policy. So I would very much like us to revisit and either keep the policy as is or revise the policy. So I am making that request.
I know I said to Andrews and Dr. Robinson next, but I didn't get a chance to say one thing, and that's that I think other than tweaking the policy to make it work better, I think that the arrangement works perfectly. I mean, we have an outside inspector general. We spent many discussions on making sure that the inspector general could not investigate any board member or the superintendent or the general counsel. So that's why we have the outside. And there were some errors by the outside inspector general in the way he presented and released things, and that's all a matter of making sure his contract is straightened out so he understands that the policies that we have to be followed, even though he's over there in Pinellas and we're over here. So I don't think that's an issue. I think it works fine. I mean, I've worked with the Inspector General's office now for how many years? 9 years or 8 years since they've been in place, and I haven't seen any. There's a concern specifically with the principal leadership, that there's some areas that the Inspector General should limit on certain things that, you know, and I asked actually Ms. McBride and the Inspector General to take a look at the different things that the Inspector General looks at, and there was one catch-all phrase, which is like everything else, and I said maybe the everything else needs to come out, and we specify exactly, you know, fraud, waste, abuse, or the different things that are specified that we had, and take out the catch-all to make it more specific about what the Inspector General does, and that'll limit some of the work he has to do, and then it's done by other departments. But I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there. I think the office is doing a great job, and I think the outside Inspector General that we have under contract is there for a reason, and that's to make sure that if there's any problems where the board members have done anything, the superintendent's done anything, the Inspector General's done anything, or the General Counsel, that's referred out to an outside Inspector General to doing the investigation to make the determination. I believe, Mrs. Andrews, you were next.
Thank you. And I'm just really pleased to say that in going to my meetings with Mr. Chu and his team, that I think all of you have been trained to be IGs. Am I missing something there? Could you help me? Because your training component, I thought, was very impressive to me. When we start talking about succession planning, and I look at all the people that work in this building, when we can get people cross-trained so that they can actually do that work, that's a big deal to me. So is that true, Mr. Chu? I think that's what you had mentioned, that your staff has been trained.
Yes, I constantly ask staff to rotate doing investigation or audit. Even audits, we have compliance audit and performance audit. And also I've asked my staff to sit in the Association of Inspector General for the certification program, the Certified Inspector General. And I believe four of them has passed. So we are very well qualified, and a lot of times I look to them for suggestion and advice, how to become more effective. It's like becoming like a arts and science together. So, and also I like to put on record that we do meet with OPS on a continuous basis. My staff Oscar, he meets with OPS and also police either every other week, and constantly to bring up what reports are going to go out and what issue that we are facing. And they also advise us what they have received in the pipeline so that we won't duplicate our work. I mean, we have little staff compared to other agencies. We have to do it very efficiently. We cite people for duplication of effort. Of course, we won't do it by ourselves. So I like to make it clear.
May I just follow up?
You follow up, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to say that I want to commend this board because I've been sitting here almost 10 years. We did some work on putting this together. And when I got my book the other day and over the last few weeks, I've gone through everything you've done, your team has done here in this district, and how you've brought us this far. It's to be commended from you as well as this board in getting it done. I think where we are now, or maybe fine-tuning some things, maybe working on some relationship building or whatever it is that people are talking about, that sometimes sitting here as one board member, I may not know. So we have to discuss these things, especially now as you're transitioning, Mr. Chu. We love what you have done with us. You've been with the school board for many, many, many years, and some of your department has been right there with you. So the work you've done, you're to be commended, but I want to make sure that everybody understands where I'm sitting here with the board is that we can always tweak and be better. So the kinds of conversations we're having now, I want us to have more of those, not just at a workshop, but more of those together. So when we see something, we can correct it immediately, and we don't have to wait and hold on to something figuring we have to do something different or big. We can correct these issues. And thank you, Mr. Barbieri, for taking the lead and putting this meeting together to discuss some things that can help our district be better. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Robertson, then Ms. Whitfield.
Thank you. So yeah, I think it's always good for people to collaborate and problem solve together. It's my understanding that the IG, OPS, and school police meet monthly anyway to discuss cases, but it's always good to bring whoever else to the table who is a stakeholder in that issue. One of the things, as I recall reading in the letter from the Administrators Association, was something about timelines, and the timelines for investigations. So I have a concern, actually, so I sent these questions in this morning, and I don't see the answers, and it's okay. So I just want to make sure I'm not sleeping on that one, too. So I sent 2 questions in about investigations. And so one, and the answer later is fine, because I know this is not a, shoot from the hip kind of answer, but one is just to compare the credentialing of the people that do investigations that are in the IG's office, that are in OPS, and are in school police. Because at least for me, as a person who doesn't live in that world, I kind of need to wrap my mind around it, because it's like some overlapping functions. And so I just need to understand that, later when it's the multiple departments have had time to outline it. But then also, no, you didn't just hand me the answer. Okay, so this is the IG's answer. Okay, so the other departments need to answer too, right? Okay, so thank you for that. And then the other parts have to do with the time limits, right? So like in the IG policy, it says something about the timeline, like we'll timely submit final reports, right? And so as part of this meeting you have, Mr. Barbieri, I would ask if there could be some expectations, not rules, but expectations set for when the board should expect investigations to be completed, right? And then the third part, the third thing that I sent was, so the IG publishes his investigations on the website when they're done, right? But other departments don't, and I get confidentiality things, but as a board member, I would like to know when things are done, when the investigations are complete. So if it goes, and I'm a firm believer in the hotline, people call in the IG, and I remember those painful discussions, the 19 meetings or whatever, and it was important to me that if people call the IG because of the independence, that then if it gets referred to OPS or the school police, that the IG still has a responsibility to close the loop, to make sure from the IG's point of view that those investigations were completed by those other entities to the IG's satisfaction. And then I want, as a board member, to be able to kind of check that off the list. So all that is to say, we need to figure out some kind of way for the board to know the outcomes of these investigations by other departments, even if is deemed to be unfounded or no action to take or whatever it is, because it just appears, especially in the past, and I'm not saying this is happening now, but definitely in the past, things seem to go to some of these other places and get lost or be impacted maybe by relationships, and which is why I think the IG's office is so important. And then lastly, I just want to make the point that the IG's staff reports to the IG, right? Now, as opposed to legal. No, you're shaking your head no. No, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Erica. So the
policy says
Mrs. Whitfield. The policy says yes, right?
We report to the IG.
Okay, because I just reread the policy to try to wrap my mind around this conversation. So I'm just going to throw this out here in the universe, but it seems to me that the legal department staff should report to the general counsel and therefore report to us. But I get that that's another conversation for another day. But my point is, because the staff in the OIG reports to the IG and are not technically employees of the superintendent, then that adds to the independence, right? And I'm just looking for more independence. Okay, I'm done for now.
So I thought they were employees
Whitfield?
of the superintendent. I thought they were employees of the superintendent. Is that not true?
No, If you look at the beginning of your policy, it indicates that we report to the IG and basically to the board through the IG.
But that would mean you would be all our employees, wouldn't it?
That's basically what the policy says, yes.
Oh, wait, hold on. I have a whole list of things to talk about.
Okay,
Up
well,
next on
just
the
in
list.
response to that piece, though, since he,
Okay.
okay, so can we agree we're going to revisit the policy at least? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, it looks like we need to revisit that policy. Okay, so here, I'm just going to try a couple more of explaining my position and why this is the kind of conversation I wanted to have. So I think, to me right now, no one questions whether or not this IG is a good IG. I think you guys do a very, very good job. It's actually, I would say you do a better job than I would even hope to have, right? Because if you look at other counties of our size and or bigger, they don't have IG offices that are as comprehensive as this one, that cover so much work, that do so much with not a ton. My argument would be that I don't feel like we need to have the Cadillac of investigative generals in Palm Beach County. Yes, we have had corruption here. I get that that's a thing, but Palm Beach County Schools is doing quite well. So a few months ago, when we were doing our decision-making on how many positions people were to get, the investigator general decided that he wanted one position. Now my understanding is that you're asking for 3 positions. So to me, that is an expansion of the work product that you could do. I feel like when I'm looking at the amount of work that is currently being done, when I meet with you, Mr. Chu, we talk about the work plan. And every time I say, I believe I've said this seriously for the last 5 years, wow, that looks like a lot of work. Aren't your people exhausted? Because you do so much on there. And I say, is there anything that you could cut so that people are don't have so much to do? And you're always like, well, this is very much, there's so much to do, and, you do very good work. So my thought process here is that I don't want to continue to expand the Office of Inspector General. In my mind, that it should be pared back to be efficient and to be, not a huge amount of overhead and not creating a massive amount of more work. Because I think you could investigate everything, and we could just constantly do investigations just for the sake of investigations. So I feel like, as I mentioned, obviously the separation is something that was important to me. Creating even a farther space between our investigator general and the board is important. But also, I don't want to give 3 more positions to this. 1 more in investigations, 2 more in 1 in compliance and 1 in audit. It just seems to me like we're expanding and expanding, and there will always be an infinite amount of work. So I don't know how to look at the work plan and decide what is a priority, or what are the things that we should be doing that are most important to the district. But I also don't want you guys running around and spending a whole lot of time if somebody's, stolen $1,000 and it costs you $10,000 in man hours to find that money. So what I was hoping for is you have a piece in here that says how much money you've saved as an IG's office per year, I guess around $250,000 that you save per year. I want to know, is the amount of money that you spend worth the $250,000 that you save, or if there is a better balance in there that I can't tell you. I don't know how to evaluate your department in a way that makes me comfortable with it. So I know the rest of the board here spent 19 meetings going through that, excluding Barbara, of course. But everybody else spent 19 meetings going through and understanding it. But for the last 5 years, I've never felt that I completely understand why it's in-house and why we spend so much money on it. And if there's a way that we can do it more efficiently, that's what I'm looking for. So those are the 2 things. That's what I wanted to talk about in the meeting. So I want to see how much the IG's office costs separate from the audit, how much we're really saving, and if it's the best use of funds. That's it.
All right,
Thanks.
so can we kind of wrap this one up since we have a whole lot more to do tonight? We'll get back, and Mr. Chu?
Mr. Chairman, I have talked to all of you individually at least a couple of times about our work plan. Do you still want me to go through it? Because these are the same that we have discussed it before. We talked with you before, individually.
Yes, why don't you meet with each board member? Like, I know I meet with you regularly. I guess you meet with the other board members?
I did.
So if you go over the work plan with them, instead of us taking time.
I did
sorry,
already. I
7
did
o'clock.
with them already,
All right.
individually, yeah.
And again, I want to compliment you for the work you do. I mean, it's obvious that every time we go for a referendum that
Yeah.
people in this county trust that the school board is spending their money properly because they overwhelmingly support every tax increase we've asked them for. So they must have confidence that we're doing it right. And the reason we're doing a lot of things right with respect to how we spend money, not to mention Mr. Burke is on top of this stuff, and I know he lives and dies by this stuff, but you guys are also watching what's going on here. So, I think that has a lot to do with the support we get from the voters every time we ask them for a tax increase. And with that, I think we should probably move. Ms. Brill?
No, I just wanted to know, where did we wind up? Because I know you're having the meeting on Monday, and I'm not really sure where we are. So are we coming back with the costs? Are we, and then discussing if we're going forward the way we are? If we're going forward the way we are we going to come back and talk about succession? I feel like I'm sitting here not knowing what direction
Okay,
we're going.
so is the board comfortable with the Inspector General's office getting us a comparison of what it would cost for the outside? Or do you want Mr. Burke's office to do that? Is everybody okay with the Inspector General's office bringing back that information to us? So do a comparison.
I think it
What
would
it
be
would cost
fair.
for somebody to look at all those hotline calls and what an outside Inspector General would have cost to review everything that's coming in. Ms. McQuinn?
Okay, a perfect example of why we need to look at this, and it may just be the policy. As we sit here tonight, we don't know who Ms. Rico's staff or Mr. Chu's staff we know who they report to. But I have been under the understanding, since I have been on the board, that the staffs are the school district employees, so therefore Dr. Fenoy. So we have to look at this carefully.
Sure. And you're right, Ms. McQuinn. They are district employees. They are not our employees. The only 3 employees we have are Mr. Chu, Ms. Rico, and the superintendent. So if the superintendent wanted to go to Mr. Chu's office and say, I want to get rid of this one, and this one, I guess he could do that because they're his employees. To this day, he has, as far as I know, his superintendent's never done that, but they do answer, directly to their supervisor, which is Mr. Chu. And,
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, for the comparison of course, I would suggest that to maintain our independence, I would like Mr. Burke to handle it. I think it's easier. Absolutely. Otherwise, I give you the number. He said, where you get it from?
Superintendent, you okay with your department handle?
Let me confer with Mike first. Mr. Burke first. We'll bring that back, and I'll talk to each board member individually.
Okay, Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So the policy reads, however, the staff in the Office of Inspector General shall report directly to the Inspector General and report to the board through the Inspector General. Okay? So I get that Dr. Fenoy's name is on the check, but it's not the same configuration as I understand legal is. And you gonna tell me I'm wrong? Go ahead.
I'm certainly not going to tell you you're wrong.
I wouldn't go
If
there
I'm
either if I
wrong,
was
tell me
you.
I'm wrong.
The policy says what the policy says, but
Right.
and I'm not going to interpret it because there's an Inspector General has their counsel, but I would not, in my view, not interpret it as your direct employees, or you should be doing their employee evaluations and you should be doing their annual
No,
evaluations.
that's not what I was trying to say. So
It's
and
one
I
or
don't,
the other.
I don't
They're either
intend to
district-
enter into a cluster here, but I recall, like, I guess the number was 19, the pain of these 19 meetings, right? And the whole point about how this office was going to be independent, right? And that's why that, and however this Venn diagram is drawn, those employees belong to him and not the superintendent, as opposed to legal staff, which somehow belong to the superintendent, right? So, I mean, I guess we can get memos to clarify that, right? But I and I actually think, well, I've already made that point. But let me just, to the question that's been posed. I don't ever mind looking at anything, right? But I think Mrs. Brill said it best, and I think she might have been talking about Pinellas and said they don't often know how we operate. And so, and we have spent a long time after those 19 meetings working this out. I'm good with looking at the succession planning, but I'm also very clear that I'm not interested in going outside because I don't think the district can deal with the learning curve. You talk about having some investigations done by people who don't even understand the nuts and bolts of a school district, right? And coming forward with reports that accuse so-and-so of doing such and such, and then OPS has to then enter into a whole, you talking about spinning wheels? I'm not at all interested in doing that. If the board wants to look at whatever and ask Mr. Burke or whoever to report whatever, that's fine. But I'm more interested in improving what we have. Always, I'm good with looking at policies again and tweaking that. I think the succession planning is a worthy conversation.
Ms. McQuinn.
Thank you. So, I want to address the Inspector General's office being independent, if indirectly the staff is the board's, because I don't see that as independence. Each of us individually, I know that Mr. Chu is excellent about scheduling meetings with me to go over investigations and work plan. But 7 of us, and we're limited by sunshine, we come here and we discuss accolades or concerns. We're not independent in my mind if we also are in, if those staffs also are ours. I don't see that as independence at all.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah. This conversation we're having right now was exactly the conversation we had a long time ago. It was pointed out that the school board has 3 employees and that any other employees are employees of the superintendent. And I still stick with that. I was opposed to this policy when we voted on it because we got, I think, advice at the time that was not accurate. And I think this is one of the policies we've got to readdress because the law is clear and there should be no question at all about that.
All right. Can we just, no, we really need to stop because we spent hours on this one and we have so much more to do tonight. So we'll schedule another meeting. We'll get the policy thing going. We'll take a look at the policy. I just said to the superintendent, maybe we could work a way so that they're more independent, even though his name is on their paychecks, that he can't interfere with the operations in the IG office without coming to the board and getting approval. So maybe we can look at something to tweak the policy to make sure that there's total independence from that standpoint. But we can discuss all that, and he's indicated he's willing to take a look at that. So can we just stop it for tonight? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, is it okay that we bring back the work plan for the adoption? Or do you want me to present again?
So why don't you show it to each one of the board members and then bring it back for adoption?
Okay, I did. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't want to
by
bore
the
you
21st.
guys.
Could I just recommend that after you work, and again, I'm not giving you direction, I'm just making a recommendation.
Yeah, don't do that.
After you meet with each of the board members, if we can try to get it back on the next board meeting for the adoption, that way we can keep moving forward.
Okay, dare I board discussion Andrews on court education liaison program?